Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Facebook Live, where we're joined by Tracy from the fiction team, and also Riverside author Glenda Young has been nice enough to join us. If you have been following the Facebook page, you'll know that we're going to have, Tracy's going to interview Glenda and ask her some questions about her writing, her novels, writing in general, I guess, and also, of course, Riverside, which is a staple of The Friend and enormously popular. So if you have any questions currently while we're watching, just put them in the comments here and I will read them out. But for now, Tracy, over to you.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you for inviting us into your chat show studio. Indeed. And good morning, Glenda.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. This is wonderful. It's my first ever Facebook Live.
You're going to brighten up a very dreich day, let's just say, up in Scotland. And admiring the roses there, they are beautiful.
Yeah, picked them fresh this morning from the garden, especially for Facebook Live today. And it's a pretty bad day here to do it today as well. Yeah.
That's good. Well, first of all, I've got to ask you, how is your ankle? Because I believe you had a lockdown.
I did, yes. I think it was the second week of lockdown, I sprained my ankle in the garden, and I just thought I'd put it up on the couch for a day, put a bag of peas on it and it would be fine. But 3 months later, I'm still suffering, and yeah, so it's pretty bad. But it's forced me to sit still, which I don't often do. Yeah. So it's forced me to sit still, and I've been doing a lot of writing, which has been the positive out of it.
That's good. That's one of the plus sides of lockdown injuries, I suppose, isn't it? Well, before we get on to Riverside, could you just tell everyone a little bit about your writing journey, when you started,
sure,
and just how you got into the successful place you are now?
Well, I've always loved writing ever since I was a little girl. Always wrote stories and poems, and then to slide them away at the back of my knicker drawer and forget all about them. And then it wasn't really until I was, I guess, in my early 30s, and I did a journalism degree as a mature student, because I'd always loved writing and I always felt it was something I wanted to do, and I felt like I'd missed out on going to university when I was younger. And so I did this journalism degree purely because it had a creative writing module, and my writing really kicked up a gear from then. But I was really writing more factual and non-fiction work. I was writing books for ITV Coronation Street because I'm a huge Corrie fan. And it wasn't really until a few years ago that I started writing fiction. And my first ever short story that I wrote was accepted by you, Tracy, and I'll never ever forget the email that I got from you to say, my story, you'd like to buy my story. Honestly, I almost fell off my chair. And even though I've sold, I did, honestly. It's such an amazing feeling, because it validates everything that you hope that you feel inside, and it's like, yes, I am a writer. Someone likes this and they want to buy it, and they want to sell it, and people are going to read it in a magazine. And I remember the first time I ever made the front cover of the People's Friend magazine, and my name was on the front cover, and I stood in a supermarket and just watched people walking by and just hoping that someone would pick it up so I could say that's me. And then the People's Friend very kindly asked me to write Riverside, the first weekly soap opera for the magazine, which was a huge honour. And I've been doing that almost 4 years now. Can you imagine?
I believe it.
And I love writing. I absolutely adore it. And once I think it was a couple of years of Riverside under my belt, it really gave me such strong confidence in my writing that I approached an agent, and she got back to me and took me on. And I've been writing saga novels for Headline. They gave me a 6-book deal. It's all down to the People's Friend. This has all come because of you, Tracy. It's all your fault.
You're very talented, Glenda. Let's remember that as well.
Yeah,
but I remember the first story so well because it was just lovely and it just stood out. And when you just know, and obviously, as you know, the vetting process in the Friends is very thorough, and it gets read by more than one person. And it was just such a huge thumbs up and just so lovely. And it never gets old when you get in touch with an author for the first time to say that, you know, you love their story and you want to buy it. So it was great for us as well. Yep.
Thank you very much indeed. But I feel like I've got a lot to be grateful to People's Friend for. All the fiction team have been so supportive. I went on a fiction writing workshop in York when Shirley was the fiction editor. This was a few years ago now, and I can honestly say it was one of the best days, and it was an investment in myself. It was. I sat right at the front of the class, and I had my notepad ready, and I hung on to every word, and I can only liken it to being. You know, when you're at school and you're in your favourite lesson with your favourite teacher, it was like that, and it was all day. And fiction workshop stood me in such good stead, not only for writing for the People's Friend, but also just for crafting a short story, getting the reader involved right from the very first word. So now my saga novels they're set in the village where I grew up and where I was born and bred. So they're very special to me. There's a lot of my heart that goes into the novels.
That's brilliant. Well, for anyone that's maybe not too familiar with Riverside, could you just give us a very sort of quick sort of overview of what it's all about?
Yeah. So Riverside is set in an ex-industrial shipyard that has been cleared. Now I live in Sunderland, so it's not based in Sunderland. It's based on any industrial wasteland that's been turned into something new. But certainly in Sunderland, we did have the shipyards. So it's an ex-shipyard that's now got fancy apartments on it. It's got a fancy deli. It's got a hairdressing salon. There's a pub there. So there's been lots of changes over the years in Riverside, and some of the characters, in fact, most of the characters welcome these changes, but there's a few of them who prefer the old days. So there's a bit of tension going on there between the old and the new. It's got all of the soap staples, like I say, there's a pub, there's a hair salon, there's a community centre, and most of the action takes place around the old engine room, deli cafe, which is quite posh and a bit swanky. And they have themed menus, you know, for instance, I've just been writing the Halloween edition, so there's a special Halloween menu that goes on there. But at the heart of it, and again, this is purely for the People's Friend magazine, at the heart of the soap opera is a friendship between two women, Ruby and Mary. And whatever else happens, that friendship remains at the core of this soap opera. And I love writing it. I can't speak highly enough of the People's Friend for giving me this opportunity, because it's the writing highlight of my week.
Well, we certainly love when it comes in on a Wednesday or a Thursday and it pops into my inbox. It's always, you know, you're in just for a little bit of Glenda bubble, but Riverside, and it's just delightful. It really is. And there's so much love for Riverside as well, and quite a lot amongst our gentlemen readers. And we've had a few questions, so I'm just going to get, obviously, specs on. Our first question, Glenda, is from Linda Johnson, and she would like to know, where do you get your inspiration for the characters? Because there's quite a few standout characters, aren't there?
There are. Well, the inspiration comes, it's basically because we've got Ruby and Mary right at the core, these two women in their strong friendship. So the characters really are built around Ruby and Mary. So we've got Mary's husband, George, and he's a bit of a stick in the mud. And then we've got Ruby's husband, Jim, who has... I can't give too many spoilers away, but I've just been writing something where there might be some trouble brewing for Ruby and Jim. But I don't really know where the inspiration does come from. I think it's all based around Ruby and Mary and how new characters come in that might affect these two women and their friendship. Whether it might threaten their friendship or whether it might make their friendship a little bit stronger. But I also like to bring in comedy characters as well. And again, I won't give any spoilers away, but I've just been writing something for the autumn where a character that I introduced some time back makes a return. And it just every time I just think of her name, it makes me smile and makes me laugh. So I like a bit of comedy. So some characters are inspired by that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know who you're speaking about, and she's very popular with Lucy and I as well. Can I just say?
I'll just interrupt for a second. We've been joined by Beth and Helen and Liz and Amanda and Louise and Sandra. Hello, everyone. And also Jan, who says, I remember, Glenda, when you wrote the Corrie updates, we used to be months behind here in New Zealand, and it was great to see what's what in advance. You have a wonderful way with words. I don't need the Corrie updates now, but I love Riverside. And we've also had another. Beth says she loves Riverside, and Anne says she always reads Riverside first.
That is wonderful to hear. Really nice. Thank you very much indeed.
We've got another question here for you, Glenda, from Gloria Ward. How do you remember what's happening with the characters? Because there is quite a lot goes on. There's quite a few characters, so how do you manage that?
Well, I do keep I keep a few paragraphs about each character in a Word document. So, for instance, I know when birthdays are coming up and when wedding anniversaries or christenings or any significant dates. I know when they're coming up, so I can work them into the storylines. And I also, in those few paragraphs about each character, I know, for instance, that George is a keen gardener, as am I with my roses. George is a keen gardener, so that's always got to be a repeating theme where George might be disappearing up the allotments or growing something in the garden or flicking through the seed catalogues. So it's just, if something significant happens to the characters, I always make a note of it. And also the small incidental things that might happen to them as well, whether they prefer tea or coffee. So, and it's bizarre because I've spent, almost 4 years with these characters now, living in my head, whole community of them. And I feel like I go into any big department store and for instance, George, I know what kind of trousers George would wear or what colour socks. So it's really about, with all kinds of fiction, it's about knowing your characters inside and out and almost second guessing what they would do. So I keep paragraphs in a Word document. It's as simple as that, really. Yeah.
And do you have favourite characters in Riverside that you're particularly warmed to?
Yeah, my favourite is Ruby. Well, Ruby and Mary are my two favourites. I think I'd like Mary to be my mum and I'd like Ruby to be my older sister. So Ruby and Mary are my favourites, but I like them all. Every time I sit down to write Riverside, I think, who am I going to focus it on this week? Which storylines am I going to bring to the fore? And it might be Bob Lewin, who doesn't go anywhere without his green hat, and there might be something funny. Actually, no spoilers, but there's a very funny storyline coming up, perhaps September, about Mary, Ruby, and Bob Lewin, and I think it's one of the funniest things I've ever written. But I can't say any more than that. So it all depends on where the story's going as to how much I particularly enjoy writing for that character. I'm really fond of Sam and Claire as well, who are working behind the bar in the pub, because they're really hardworking. They're a young couple, and again, no spoilers, but they are going through a bit of a hard time at the moment.
Yes, they are. They are indeed. Well, we've got a really good question here from Elaine Everest, Glenda, and she is asking, how do you divide your time between writing your wonderful historical novels, which we can see there, and your shorter fiction, and is it easy to switch between the two?
Oh, that's a good one. When I'm writing a novel, I concentrate fully on the novel and I don't write anything else apart from Riverside. Riverside, I always schedule in for a Wednesday afternoon. I don't do anything else. Wednesday afternoons are Riverside. That's it. So any of the writing I do, even my novels, is written around that sacred Wednesday afternoon slot for Riverside. So when I'm writing novels, I rarely write any of the short stories because I just don't have the headspace for it. I think most writers would know that. But at the moment, I've got some spare time, so I have been writing short stories, and I tend to sit down first thing on a morning and spend a couple of hours and do one story on a morning. And then leave it overnight, let it sink in, go back the next day and edit it and tweak it a bit. Some of the stories I'll send to competitions, some I'll send to people's friend. It all depends what kind of story they are. But yeah, it's a tricky one. I think when you've got a creative mind, sometimes it's hard to calm it down. But I'd rather have too many stories coming out than none.
And what do you do, Glenda? This is a question that pops up from writers. They sometimes hit the dreaded writer's block. And, you know, different writers have different ways of dealing with that. Do you have something that gets you over that?
Yeah. Touch wood, I'm touching my wooden table here. I tend not to suffer too much from writer's block, and I think that's because I plan quite a lot in advance. I plan and I plot before I even sit down to start writing. So when I actually sit down and I'm faced with a blank screen, I know where I'm going, I know what I'm doing, and that really helps get over that mental hurdle of, oh crikey, you know, I need to start writing now. What do I do? I know exactly where I'm going to go with it. Doesn't mean it becomes easy. And I think, yeah, but that's the way I do it.
Well, we've got Riverside, we've got your short stories, and then you made the jump to writing novels. Was there a lot of pressure on you because you had initially this 3-book deal? And how did you tackle going from maybe 2,000, 3,000 words to an actual novel?
There was no pressure, really. I think what was absolutely fantastic, when I got the first book deal with Headline for 3 books, I knew I had a certain amount of time and a deadline to turn the book into them. So I worked out how many words they wanted from me, and then I split it over the number of days I had to write it in. And then I sat down and I just write 2,000 words every day. And so all of the short stories that I do write for the People's Friends in chunks of 2,000 words stood me in really good stead for writing novels. It was just amazing how it all fell into place. So that's my word limit now. I sit down on a morning and I do my best to write 2,000 words. Sometimes I don't make it, but hopefully most days I do.
That's brilliant. And I know obviously your saga novels, there's a lot of historical element, local historical element. Have you enjoyed the research side of that then?
Yeah. Oh yeah. The research is my favourite part because it's put me in touch with my roots in a way that I didn't expect. And I'm just so proud that these novels are putting the little village of Ryhope, where I'm from, on the map. I absolutely love research. I love being in museums and libraries and archives and, you know, finding old plans and maps and dusty old bits of paper with interesting, you know, names on. I absolutely adore all of that. And in lockdown, obviously, I haven't been able to get out to do that. So I've been using the internet a little bit more, well, a lot more than normal, and finding the limitations of using the internet for historical research, to be honest. It's useful, but only up to a point. For me, I like to get out there and experience things. And I like to go to a local museum we've got here called Beamish. It's an outdoor museum where you can walk around the old pit villages and talk to the volunteers who are all dressed up in clothes from that period. It's an amazing place. So I've missed doing that sort of thing. But fortunately, I've got enough research that I've done for my previous books to be able to draw on for the book that I've just been writing.
I'll just jump in there if you don't mind, Tracy. We've had quite a lot of love for Riverside in general. Also, Rosie was asking, is Glenda a plotter or does she write into the mist? I think you've probably answered that. And love for your organisational skills. But also, Helen says, Glenda, I loved your story that won the Evesham Festival short story competition recently, The Fan Club Man. It was so funny. Do you like writing humour?
Yes, I really, really do enjoy writing humour. It comes to me quite easily, and I think that's because I've got quite a weird sense of humour. And it's nice that other people find that funny sometimes as well. The story that Helen refers to, The Fan Club Man, that was a really peculiar story, and I'm very, very privileged it won the competition. I actually submitted a short comedy script last year, and I was one of the finalists in the Ian Lefrene and I can't remember the names. It was Lefrene and Clemens. That's the one. Le Clement and Clemens short story. Sorry, it was the comedy. Oh, I'm getting all confused now because I'm embarrassed. Anyway, I won an award for a comedy script last year. So I would, I'd really like to do more comedy.
And if that was a script, Glenda, could you see yourself at some point writing for Coronation Street or something like that? Because we know that's quite close to your heart.
Yeah, no, I'd never want to write a script for television. I don't think I'm good enough. I don't think I've got it in me to do that sort of thing. But I do love writing dialogue, I must admit, and I've had a couple of very short scenes and short scripts acted out on stage by local groups. But no, I don't think I've got the discipline to do a full television script. I'd much rather just write novels. I'm saying just. I'd much rather I'd much rather write novels and just let my imagination go free. So I'm not confined to a television plot that someone else has devised.
Yeah. And obviously there'll be a lot of writers watching this just now. What advice? I know that sounds a bit simplified, but what advice would you give someone who is trying to break in to women's fiction?
Oh, never ever give up. The People's Friend is so helpful because you put your guidelines on the website. You're always putting out story prompts on social media, and hopefully, when everything gets back to normal, you may even be running the fiction workshops again. So I would say take advantage of everything that the People's Friend offers. Look online, have a look at their guidelines, write a story to suit the magazine. One of the first things I did. I bought a book, How to Write and Sell Short Stories, by a lady called Della Galton, and Della, I think, writes for lots of women's magazines. And the first thing it says in Della's book is, put this book down, go out and buy the magazine that you're interested in writing for. So I did, and I spent a couple of weeks reading the People's Friend magazine, and that's what you need to do. Research, read the guidelines, and never give up. And you will get rejections. I get rejections even now, because my story is just perhaps not quite right for what's needed. So don't get upset when you get a rejection. It's awful and it hurts, but just keep going. Just keep going. I'm living proof that you can do it, honestly.
That's brilliant. And finally, Glenda, do you have a message for the People's Friend readers at all? Because this is quite a difficult time. We're all feeling a little bit cut off from everyone, but the Friend's pretty much there for everyone all the time. So do you have a message for them?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you very much indeed for all the love for Riverside. It's absolutely amazing. And I think we're all suffering right now. And I think it's just basically taking joy and love where you can find it. For me, it's with my roses in the garden. And my husband is a wonderful cook, I must admit. So I'm getting a lot of really nice food cooked for me. Missing people terribly, missing going out and just having a life. But just take the love and the joy from the people that you can and from the things that you really enjoy.
That's brilliant. Well, Glenda, thank you so much. It's lovely to catch up with you as always. And hopefully we'll get our Strictly Come Dancing emails this year again when we can discuss it if it's on. I know we both enjoy it.
We do.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy, and good luck with all the books. And
thank you.
Riverside, can't beat it.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. We will be back again next week for Facebook Live, so we will see you then. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.